So it looks like the supplement brand by Kourtney Kardashian, Lemme, is undergoing some kind of class action scrutiny. The question is it justified? Right? Did Lemme do something wrong here, or is there something else, another force at play? We're going to dive into the specifics of this class action investigation. We're going to look at Zimmerman and Reed, that's the law firm that's doing all this. We're going to look at the claims that caught their attention, some of the formulation issues that caught their attention. And we're going to dive into the specific details of that. And obviously, we're going to look at what we can learn from this, right? What can you take away as a supplement startup brand or an entrepreneur that's thinking about starting your own supplement brand? So we got lots to cover. Let's get to it. Now, if this is your first time here, my name is Brian, and it's great to meet you. I've been in the supplement space for over 2 decades now, specializing in regulatory affairs and quality assurance, and I help supplement brands grow by navigating FDA and FTC requirements. And if you want to work with me directly, there are links in the description down below. Let's get to this whole Kourtney Kardashian lawsuit, quote unquote. And I say that because I haven't been able to find the actual lawsuit or notice, the class action notice. And maybe it's just a matter of time. I suspect that's what's happening, and that's the impression I'm getting in all of this. But just heads up here, there's a lot of articles that are, at least from a headline standpoint, giving the impression that they are facing a class action lawsuit. I don't believe it's officially issued to them or served to them. So it's interesting when you see the headlines, it sounds like they are facing the class action lawsuit, but when you dive into it, not so much. And when you go through the article here, right, Zimmerman and Reed, a class action litigation firm, has launched an investigation into the reality TV star's popular line of gummies and supplements. So they're just launching the investigation. They haven't actually officially launched or given notice of the class action. So it's more of a technical thing, but I think it's also very important. Now let's dive into what Zimmerman Reed is looking at here. So this is from Zimmerman Reed, and there's 2 sections here. Obviously, on this section, they're talking about what claims they find interesting or at issue. And then on this section, they want people to fill out the form and reach out to them. And what's interesting about this, and it gives you insight a little bit as to how the lawyers work, is that in order for them to build the class action, they need people to come forward. And what this is going to allow them to do as well is identify a number, right, of which they can say, you should settle with us or you should be punished for X million of dollars, right? That's kind of what they're trying to do. They're trying to get a ballpark figure. And the more people that they can get to fill this out, the larger that number is going to be. Now, this is very common amongst these class action lawyers, and they might do this over Twitter, they might do this through YouTube, and the whole goal of this is just to get as many people as possible into this class action so they can then go after a larger sum of money. That's pretty much it. And let's be real here. Typically, and you can see this all other class action lawsuits, you can see that Apple settled for hundreds of millions of dollars, or Volkswagen. And ultimately, us, the consumer, what do we get out of that? Like $16 a voucher of something. I remember like Danone got sued at one point, and you got a few bucks as a result of this, out of this hundreds of $1 million settlement. So the figures on the headlines sound really big, but when it's us consumers, we really don't get that much. So what's going on here? I think there's an element of, well, the lawyers are the ones that really makes the money out of this. They're charging the billable hours. They're getting some money out of that, the actual settlement. And so that's just the reality of these things. And I'm not saying that Zimmerman Reed's doing this for bad intentions. I'm not saying good intentions either. I'm just saying, this is just the reality. At the consumer level, we don't get that hundreds of millions of dollars. We're getting only, change, chump change, if you will, right, in the grand scheme of things. But the brand has to pay a lot, and a huge chunk of that money goes to the lawyers. That's very, very well known. Regardless, you can see this is really important for them. And like I said, they will post on social. The whole point is to get as many people aware of this potential class action so they'll sign up, and then that will balloon that dollar figure as to what they can ask for, in a sense, to Lemme. And so you have all these publications talking about the class action lawsuit. You've got this going viral on social media. I've been seeing the TikToks and all that fun stuff, and it's going around. And there are going to be some people that feel like they got, cheated, or that they didn't get the benefit that they thought they were going to get. They are going to get people to sign up. But the goal here from a lawyer standpoint is to get more and more traction, get more and more eyeballs, and then hopefully get more signups, which is really interesting. So that's like some insight there as to how these lawyers work. And sometimes these lawyers will also look at other regulatory agency decisions or other publications, for example, other news articles that may have talked about Lemme in a negative light. They'll use that to support their case. In my previous video around Armra, that particular supplement was featured in a Tina article. And in that article, they talked about how colostrum wasn't that effective. And the lawyers used that article, referenced that article, right? Or let's just say that there's an FDA warning letter that was issued to a brand. Well, the lawyers are going to glom onto that warning letter and then build their class action against that. So typically when a supplement brand or any CPG brand gets hit, let's just say by a regulatory body, let's just say, for example, it is FDA, not only are you trying to address the issue with the FDA directly, and you might get that resolved, 2 months later, a class action lawsuit or some sort of legal notice will land on your desk, and now you have to fight that too. Always fun, but that's usually how this all works. All right, so let's dive more into the claims that have caught Zimmerman Reed's attention. Launched in September 22, Lemme is a supplement brand that has garnered significant attention on social media, supported by extensive marketing campaign. However, we are investigating whether Lemme violated consumers' rights by misleadingly and deceptively marketing its products. So interesting. It's a fairly young supplement brand, but obviously they've got the money to really push on the ads, the influencers, the reviews, all of that, versus let's just say a smaller brand that doesn't have that power. Essentially, there's just a lot more eyeballs, and lawyers like brands with a lot more eyeballs because that means a lot more sales, which means a lot more damages, which means they can then ask for more money in these class action notices. So let's keep going. Lemme Per Gummies. Hopefully you're enjoying this video. And really quick, if you are interested in starting a supplement brand and you want to understand how to navigate the FDA and FTC requirements of all of it, help you find a manufacturer, you can actually work with us directly. Links in the description down below. Back to the video. Lemme claims that these gummies support vaginal odor. However, according to a report by Women's Health magazine, there isn't any evidence that a particular ingredient can change vaginal odor for different women. So this is interesting. There's two things that catch my attention. The first one here is the claim itself, supports vaginal odor. It's really not that crazy, right? You can tell, in my opinion, and this is true when I crawl on their website, that I believe that Kourtney Kardashian's team or whoever rolled the supplement out, for the most part, ran it through compliance or legal. And you can tell that they've worded the language in a way that is relatively, conservative, if you will. They're not talking about how it's going to eliminate odor or decrease vaginal odor. They're just saying it supports vaginal odor, right? It's fairly bland. And, but yet, there's still an issue here. And I think, obviously, Lemme is going to defend themselves and argue this point. But it's still not enough to get out of this class action lawsuit to begin with. So that's number one. And I think the big call out for you is that just because the words sound pretty fine, there's another element of, does it actually do what it's supposed to do? And I think there's a formulation component to this. Like, is your product still efficacious? Would it, though, still decrease vaginal odor, or is it intended to? Like, is there enough ingredients in there? Like, I think there's an element of that regardless of how you word it, right? Is it truthful, not misleading, and is it properly substantiated, right? That's the call out here. The words itself isn't that crazy, but regardless of whether it's not crazy, or pushing the boundaries, at the end of the day, you also want to make sure that you are substantiating your claims. So that's element number one. Element number two is this reference to this article in Women's Health magazine, that there isn't any evidence that an ingredient can change vaginal odor. What's interesting here is that since when did Women's Health magazine become like the holy grail of science, right? It's interesting that they use this as the reference point. I mean, I can see where the average consumer may still read like as if, oh my gosh, Lemme did a really horrible thing. Ultimately, when you're substantiating your products, you don't rely on a Women's Health magazine. You're relying on the science, the PubMed articles, the clinical trials, any sort of scientific literature. That's what you're looking for. Seems kind of odd that they're referencing this. And again, it's quite possible that the Lemme Per gummies are properly formulated. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but it's quite possible. And it's weird. The bar isn't what Women's Health magazine says. The bar is, according to FTC and FDA, is the clinical research, the clinical trials. So it's kind of interesting that they reported this. All right. But this gives you insight as to how lawyers work. sometimes, I'm not saying that Zimmerman Reed is doing this, but sometimes they're not doing that extra digging. Some lawyers just don't care. They just want to issue this notice. The fact that they're throwing the notice in might result in a settlement, which means money in their pockets. And they didn't really have to do that much work. Like the likelihood, let's be real here, of Lemme going to trial, I think is going to be quite minimal, right? They just want this problem to go away. They'll settle. And I think some lawyers, again, I'm not saying Zimmerman Reed's like that, but some lawyers understand that game. They play that game instead. So they're not really doing hardcore digging into how poor the formula is or how bad the claims are. They just want to collect enough to put a notice or a class action together just to get the ball rolling, scare the brand, and hopefully just settle. Okay, moving on. Lemme Curb capsules. These capsules are advertised to be formulated with clinically studied ingredients to support healthy blood sugar. But 2 of Lemme Curb's active ingredients are dosed at levels 4 times less bitter lemon and 20 times less Ceylon cinnamon or Ceylon cinnamon than the doses supported by scientific literature. Number 1, were the ingredients in clinical studies? I imagine that they were. And they're just supporting healthy blood sugar. They're not saying it's going to decrease blood sugar. They're not going to say it's going to drop, or boost insulin or decrease insulin. It's not talking about that. They're just saying it's just supporting healthy blood sugar levels. So it's worded properly, okay? But then the lawyers are saying, yet 2 out of the 4 of your ingredients are underdosed. Well, that also implies the other 2 ingredients are properly dosed. Now, this is an interesting point, and there's a part of me that hopes that this goes to trial, but I highly doubt it, because is the bar then that all your ingredients have to be at efficacious doses, or can only certain key ingredients need to be at efficacious dose as long as it gets you to the claim? So, for example, if out of the 4 ingredients, 2 of them will drop or support healthy blood sugar levels, at the end of the day, the consumer is getting that benefit, at least scientifically speaking. Therefore, why do you need the other 2 to be at efficacious dose? There's that element there. Or is the expectation that all 4 have to be at efficacious dose? And there's an argument that can be made well, if you do all 4 at efficacious doses, yes, there's a cost implication. Yes, there's an aspect of, is it even feasible? Will it fit in the capsule? Will it fit in the gummy? But there's another element of all 4 ingredients are at an efficacious dose. Is there the risk of maybe dropping your blood sugar levels too much, right? There's that aspect of it too. And I'm curious because I think the reality here is that if a supplement formula is formulated correctly, the approach typically taken is that, 1 or 2 of the ingredients, the key ingredients that are heavily tied to the claim, those are formulated efficacious amounts. And then the rest of the ingredients are more supportive ingredients. Either they support from a different mechanism of action, they support a different part of the condition or the issue that it's trying to address, and not necessarily contributing directly to the claim. I think that makes scientific sense. This particular lawyer is arguing that all 4 ingredients need to be at efficacious doses. And I think, if that's the bar, the costs are going to go up. The feasibility of fitting all of this into your capsule, that's another question. Fitting it all to your gummy, is it even possible to do this? It's going to change the way we handle or do supplements right now. So that's interesting. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it'd be cool to see this go to trial because then we can get a ruling and figure out what is the right way to do it. But I don't think that's going to happen realistically. And just separately, when it comes to formulating, I want you to know that sometimes the manufacturers, or many times, at least in my experience, I'm not trying to poo-poo on manufacturers, they don't dive that deep when it comes to substantiation. And much of the time, especially with these stock formulas out there, a lot of them don't formulate to efficacious doses. They're not looking at the scientific research. And the best case scenario is 1 of the ingredients out of the 10 or the 5 is at the efficacious amount, but all the rest are at sub-efficacious doses. And a lot of these manufacturers, when they're formulating for you, none of them might be at efficacious doses. So don't assume that the manufacturer's R&D is going to hit that. Sometimes they don't. And ultimately, you're responsible for this. So just a side note here when it comes to substantiation here and formulating. Let's keep going. Lemme de-bloat gummies. Lemme claims that these gummies relieve bloating symptoms, supports de-bloating. However, their ingredients are dosed at a much lower rate than studied. While a clinical trial reported that xylo-oligosaccharide improved the balance of bacterial strains in the gut, the trial studied doses 15 times higher than the dose included in Lemme de-bloat. Lemme de-bloat also includes 3 grams of sugar, even though studies show that sugar contributes to bloating. Now, let's jump over to this particular webpage. So this is the supplement facts from the de-bloat gummies on Amazon. I tried to go on the Lemme website, but they were just timing out when I tried to click on the supplement facts to show you guys. But anyway, what's inside? You got the macronutrients there. You got the prebiotic fiber, the xylo-oligosaccharides. And typically prebiotics are the fibers that probiotics in your intestines will consume, and it's going to help them grow better, right? It'll make them feel good and populate your intestines better because you got these probiotic fibers that they can feed off of. Now, typically with prebiotic fibers, you want to hit, close to, gram amounts. This is only 80 milligrams. So to me, on the surface, it seems quite low. Of course, I haven't dug into the research here, and there's probably more to the story potentially. But regardless, if I go over here, you've got a probiotic blend, right? 44 milligrams delivering 3 billion CFUs, and they're using Bacillus coagulans, lactospore brand, Bacillus subtilis, the D111. And typically, these are the good types of probiotics to use. They are shelf stable. There's research behind them. So they're fairly well established. Now, because it's a proprietary blend, I don't know how many billion CFUs are in one or the other. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is the class action issue did not look at the Bacillus coagulans or the Bacillus subtilis, which is important. They're only focusing on the XOS. And that's an easy thing to look at, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Lemme is doing anything wrong. They could have therapeutic amounts of these probiotics. And again, I haven't dug into the research, but maybe the research there supports a bloating claim. So if that's the case, and it's at the right dose, Lemme didn't do anything wrong. However, the lawyers are still picking apart at the XOS. But here's the thing, and it goes back to my previous point. If the probiotics are formulated at the right dose and it has the studies to support bloating, does the XOS have to be at an efficacious dose? Like, does it have to be at the gram amounts? Because you are getting the benefit of the de-bloat, assuming that's true. So, like I said, assuming that these are the right dose, it's got the studies, and it's delivering on the de-bloat claim, do we need to hit the de-bloat claim on the XOS? The lawyers are implying that you do, whereas some may argue, including myself, no, you don't need to, because the probiotics are already delivering on that claim. And that's how a lot of these formulas or products are formulated. Just imagine, how would you do this? Like, you can only fit so much in a gummy. They're tiny, they're small, especially these ones, right? And so you're trying to find very concentrated ingredients, and these are probiotics, so you don't need huge inputs here. And so you can, this is how you do it. You put the right amounts that you need, the active ingredients, and then you might have some supporting ingredients. Is it doing anything really? Probably not, but you're still delivering on the de-bloat claim, which is why I think this is so fascinating. This is why I want this to go to trial, so get a better idea of what the law will say. How's the law interpreted? What's the best way to do this? Should we be aiming for all ingredients to be formulated at efficacious doses or not? All right, Lemme matcha gummies. These gummies are advertised to help you power through your day and are said to promote vitality and longevity with organic matcha and antioxidant CoQ10. However, research suggests that matcha is effective at doses much higher than 100 milligrams, the dose contained in Lemme matcha. In fact, a single teaspoon of matcha includes roughly 2,000 milligrams, or 20 times higher than the amount in one serving of Lemme matcha. And most research on the effectiveness of CoQ10 looked at doses at or above 100 milligrams, more than double the dose found in Lemme matcha. Look at the claim. Number 1, power through your day. That's not really a structure function claim. It's not much. It's just, you're just going to power through your day. It's not promising an overt benefit, right? You're just getting through your day. That's it. Then it goes, promote vitality and longevity with organic matcha and antioxidant CoQ10. Now, is promote vitality and longevity a structure function claim? Is that a claim that people would expect to get? How do you measure vitality, longevity? I feel like it's quite broad. In my opinion, it's a very broad, general wellness type claim. That's not a legally defined category. I'm just trying to describe it. It's not really promising an explicit benefit, right? But maybe from a consumer's point of view, they feel like, oh, maybe it's going to make you live longer. Maybe it's going to give me energy. I'm not sure. I'm curious to see what people's interpretation are of that. But to me, I feel like it could be general wellness or a little bit pushing towards the structure function claim side of things. But generally speaking, it's really not saying much. Right? Like it's not giving you a measurable benefit. It's not really promising a measurable benefit. And then they talk about the dose of matcha, 2,000 milligrams, and that there's just not enough of the matcha in here. So what's interesting is, number one, if these claims aren't really that specific, you're not going to find research. Like you're going to find a clinical trial on powering through your day. How are you going to do that? How are you going to study that, right? And the chances of you finding any ingredients that does a study on powering through your day is going to be pretty slim to none, right? Pretty much none. Now, I want to look at the supplement facts for this particular product. So it looks like their website's working now. And obviously on this side, you've got you got a B vitamin in here, some other naturally occurring macros, sodium. So it's quite possible they actually put the B12 in here. Then you can look at the organic matcha green tea. I'm curious to know if this is just regular green tea powder or if this is green tea extract. That might change the equation a little bit. But yeah, it is quite low, 50 milligrams, and the CoQ10 typically is quite low, 20 milligrams. Usually you do see much higher, 100 milligrams, 150, 200, etc. So yeah, it does seem lower than normal. And I wouldn't be surprised if the compliance team was like, I look at this formula, there's really not much here. It does make sense to call it a matcha gummy because there is matcha in here. Sure, why not? And maybe it tastes like matcha or has flavor notes of matcha. And as a result, it's poorly formulated from a structure function claim. That's how I would interpret that as well. And as a result, you don't make any overt structure function claims. You don't do that because it's not formulated to hit it. That would be my approach. And I think that's exactly what this brand did. Power through your day. Personally, I probably wouldn't talk about longevity. Even vitality, I feel like there's a little bit of risk here. And for whatever the case, maybe that's really what it came down to. But as a strategy, I would be like, we are not going to talk about the benefits of matcha green tea or CoQ10. There's really not much you can say about it. Maybe you can talk about the benefits of B12. You are at a very, very high daily value, and maybe we can go there. But the way it's worded, I can see their overall strategy, which is let's not do a structure function claim, a health benefit type claim. Let's just keep the claim broad and general wellness-like. And that's what they did. It still got them in trouble, however. But there's a part of me that thinks, is this fair? Is this fair to Lemme? And there's a part of me that says, no, I don't think it is. These lawyers, they're lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. So they obviously know something that I don't, or maybe not. I have no idea. But I don't think the logic makes sense. I think it makes for great, tabloids, if you will, and people will glom on. And if they don't understand the nuances, the regulatory and the industry practices and FDA expectations, all these things, this might sound like as if Lemme is doing something horrible. But when I look at their products, I look at their claims, there's nothing that's like, oh my gosh, let's go after them. Or yeah, they're blatantly doing something wrong. I do feel that they've got the compliance people behind them and they went through it. So with that, maybe it's quite possible that Lemme will try to defend themselves. I think that they could. The question is, do they want to bother? Do they want to spend that money or not? So with that, what are some of the key takeaways here? The big one is obviously formulating properly. Now, I still think there's an outstanding question here based on this, and that is, do you want to formulate for every ingredient at efficacious doses? And based on what I've seen with all the formulation work we've done and the formulas we've come across, if you were to do that, I think there's a very impractical situation we'll be coming across in terms of feasibility. Can we fit it all in the gummy and the capsule? And then there's going to be a cost aspect of it. All right. And then potentially a safety issue. You're essentially overdosing. If all 4 ingredients are going to support healthy blood sugar levels, and let's be real, when you dive into the research, there's probably research around lowering blood sugar sugar levels, and then you're doing all 4 efficacious doses, you might risk dropping the blood sugar too low. There's an element here, right? So you don't want to do that too, which is why I think Lemme could argue against this class action should it happen. So there's a formulation component we as a brand should be looking at. And typically with my, from my approach and what I've seen in the industry, you're looking at some of the key ingredients that are really determined to be the active ingredients that really does the heavy lifting for the claims, and everything else is going to be a complementary or supportive ingredient. The other big takeaway here is that your claims typically set the expectations. Here in this particular class action, at least initiative, they're looking beyond that. It almost seems like they're treating the claims at the same level, like a very soft claim at the same level of a much stronger claim. And I don't know if I agree with that, but at the same time, it's still good practice for us to set the bar. Because just imagine if they did say this is going to lower blood sugar or eliminate odor, that's a very, very overt promise. And the bar would be even bigger. And I think Zimmerman and Reed would even have a stronger case. And here's the last takeaway, which, is kind of annoying and a bit unfortunate. And that is, as your brand succeeds and you do compliance well, no matter what, if you are going to do well and succeed in this space, there's going to be someone going after you. Just be ready for that. And you could do all the best things possible, all the best practices, but someone is still going to go after you, and you got to be prepared for that. And obviously the best way to prepare is, putting the right compliance program in place, doing the label reviews, formulation reviews, all these things. But even when you do that, the reality of a successful business is that someone's going to go after you. And it's just unfortunate. And you got to be ready to defend yourself or settle or whatever you want to do, but at least you're ready for it, right? And it's just an unfortunate situation because you're doing all the right things, and yet it's a blood-infested waters in this market sometimes, and sometimes the competitors are going to go after you for that. So be sure to watch all my other videos. I did one on the Armor lawsuit, Prevagen, lots of videos for you to consume. And if you are thinking about starting your own supplement brand, take action. Obviously, it's great to watch these videos, but it's another thing to actually get started. And I think one of the best ways to understand how the supplement world works, the operations of it all, before you drop any money, like real money, to start your supplement brand, before you sign on the dotted line with a manufacturer, before you put a deposit in with them to work with us. And we do have consulting services, as well as our online training program, the SSET program, that you can really get your hands involved and understand how the whole operation works before investing real money into your business. All right, I'll leave it there. It was a pleasure. Cheers.